Joining me now is Carlo Gonzaga, who is the CEO of Taste Holdings. You're watching Captains of Industry here on CNBC Africa. Let's start with Starbucks, a very, very prominent brand globally.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's a certain element of pride in bringing this, or being the first player to bring this brand to South Africa.
Yeah, I think certainly there is. Probably also quite linked to that is a massive sense of responsibility. You start to realise when you go down a journey with a brand like Starbucks that there's the people that are entrusting you with this brand, as we have with some of our other international brands. So probably responsibility is more than anything else. Of course, we're quite chuffed that we managed to pull it off, so to speak. But probably responsibility is the thing that weighs on our mind.
It's weighing on your shoulders.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the rollout strategy. Rosebank, you've got a flagship store,
Yeah.
and also in the Mall of Africa, and you're about to open in Menlyn, Pretoria. The flagship stores, according to your previous quotes, are costing around 10 million rand to roll out from a Capex perspective. You have said, however, that you will only have a certain number of flagship stores, and the additional stores that you roll out will be in the region of 3.5 to 4 million rand. Talk to me about this Capex expenditure, because it has been one of the concerns that the market has laid at your table and said, you're looking at about 800 million rand to roll out 200 Starbucks stores, which is your end vision.
Yeah, so I think that the Capex answer in our minds is actually quite simple, really. We've got an internal rate of return that we want to meet, and that's 25% hurdle. And so whether we commit 4 million rand to a store and get that return, or 10 million and get that return, is not that relevant to us in an entirely corporate-owned business, which is what Starbucks is for us. So currently what we're seeing out of these 2 stores that we built, which have cost in that range 8 to 10 million, is we're seeing returns well in excess of that. So, and it's a little like the journey that a lot of other players have gone with drive-throughs, is that they've built these bigger models, they're more Capex hungry, but the returns are much better. So we're quite excited about what we're seeing, and with the type of returns that we think are possible, particularly with something like a drive-through, which is performs even better than these flagships, we are told, and the examples we see around the world. We're actually quite excited about it, and we're still probably in the point where we'll get to about an EBITDA break-even store 4 or 5, which is quite unusual for a startup business.
You have also said that you are going to proceed with the rollout very carefully and slowly, and I think that goes back to what you were saying earlier, is that there's a responsibility on your shoulders.
Yeah, and also one to our shareholders. We've raised quite a lot of equity in the last year and a half, and we said to our shareholders, we first want to really understand the income statement. I think it's quite tempting to roll out numbers of stores, whether it's because we feel good about having lots of things. But in the scheme of things, in a corporate-owned business, it's about people first, building people capability. We've really got to find the right locations, and it's probably harder than most people think.
What is the right location? What qualities does the right location have to have? Or attributes, rather?
Yeah, so we're learning a lot of things about Starbucks. So Mall of Africa, a lot of guys look at us and go, well, that's interesting. Why would you not be in the spine of that where all the other food is? And that's actually not where we want to be. We want to be in a different part of the mall where there's opportunities for customers to sort of pause a bit more. It's a bit quieter. That Mall of Africa store is an escape from the brightly lit, busy mall that it is. So we wouldn't want to go near fast food, for example, is one of the places we don't want to go. We like going near fashion, and as if you go into our stores, you're seeing probably a lot more youth than a lot of people thought. But that's by design to a large degree, so we're delighted about that as a first win for us.
And how does Rosebank differ to Mall of Africa in terms of those attributes that you're looking for?
Look, Rosebank is quite a unique site. If for people that know the site in Rosebank, it was an office space before that. We saw that and said, wow, there is something we can really do well here. And where the difference is between the two is that Rosebank is really a community store. Although it's a flagship store, it's our first one. We built a really big store, it's 500 square meters. But we also built it with a view of, so we every Sunday, last Sunday of the month, we bring local artists to play, and we do free gigs, music gigs.
So there's a lifestyle element.
Very much so. So just that itself is quite different to the Mall of Africa store, which has got a far younger customer that comes in, particularly on holidays.
It sounds as though it's not one size fits all when it comes to choosing your locations.
Not at all. And what's quite interesting, which really is another, I think, quite a different expectation, is that the stores don't look the same. If you've been to both of them, and Menlyn on Main, which is our third one, they're designed completely differently. which is not the cookie cutter approach that a lot of people have sort of thought would happen, that we'd roll out. Every store was designed for that specific site in mind, taking into account the surroundings, the type of customer we think we're going to get into that store. So quite a lot of thought goes into the actual physical dimensions of the site, as well as where it goes.
You've got first right of refusal in certain African countries.
Yeah.
Would you be able to elaborate on which African countries those are?
Look, so let me maybe not stray too far from what Howard said when Howard Schultz was out here, was that we've got a big job in South Africa to do first and foremost. And if you look at how Starbucks partners around the world, they partner with deep relationships that span multiple countries. We'd be comfortable going into sub-equatorial countries, and we think it's a market that we trade in quite a few of them already. So that's sort of where we're thinking of, but it's a long way before we get there. South Africa, there's a long journey for us to travel in the South Africa store.
There are a number of analysts out there at the moment, Anthony Clark being one, in the small cap space, that are quite negative about the taste story, to put it politely. They aren't giving you credit for the rebranding of St. Elmo's and Scooters into the Domino's brand, and saying that the share price is going to languish around where it is, 224, 228 for the next 3 years out. What is your response to those detractors to the taste story?
I don't think that they're adding any further value to it. We've said that. We've said to shareholders, and we've been quite upfront with them, we said, we've got two choices as a company. We're essentially starting two greenfield businesses of the world's leading brands in their categories. So do we continue to remain listed and do this within that environment with shareholders that are supportive and want to do it? Or do we do it out of the public scrutiny? So, and we took the former choice. You
decided to take the public scrutiny, being a listed entity.
Yeah. We've had a lot of shareholders follow our journey along the way.
The Domino's, the rebranding of St. Elmo's and Scooters to the Domino's brand is not going as well as you initially thought it was. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, and look, we've said that. We went from...
well as you initially thought it would work out.
Yeah, so, we had probably two areas that we underestimated. The first one was that, we went from 0 corporate store capability to owning 26 corporate stores and 300 plus employees in 4 months. And we really didn't have the infrastructure to manage that well. And we paid quite a dear price around that learning curve that we're still learning, quite frankly. So that was one of the, but it was really part of our future strategy, is that you've got to have corporate store ownership. So we felt that if we want to leverage these brands that we've got to become good at corporate store ownership.
The franchisees, the St. Elmo's and the holders of Scooters, are pushing back, not being so willing to come into the fold?
So, two things play into it. The first one is that we said from the get-go that we didn't want to, we offered franchisees a great contribution in terms of the conversion. We funded them essentially. And they would only pay us back on incremental sales. So we thought that was the fairest way we could do it for franchise owners. The reality, though, is that it would be irresponsible of us to loan that money to sites that we didn't think were going to be here 5 years from now. And in some ways as well, even to franchisees that weren't invested in the business. The franchising landscape has changed quite a lot in the last 15 years, where you can't really be a hobbyist franchisee any longer. It's a competitive environment. And it can't be a
especially in the fast food arena.
Absolutely. So one of the things we sat down with franchisees and said, are you sure you want to be in this? Are you really sure that you want to be, you still want to be in this game and be partly invested in it, where it actually is a full-time focus is what it needs. So we ended up converting less stores than we potentially could have, but we're not unhappy with that outcome. We've unfortunately built an infrastructure that needs
100 stores. You put the number 100
that needs 100
on the
stores.
table.
So, we now got to work our way there. But we're not unhappy with what we've got to in terms of the quality of the base that we're starting with.
How far are you to reaching that 100?
Well, I think we've got 82 today, and I think we'll end this year with about 90 stores.
St. Elmo's and Scooters, will they ultimately disappear as brands?
Look, I certainly think in time they will. We've still got a couple of St. Elmo's restaurants in Zimbabwe which we're not converting. As we all know, things are a little bit fluid.
That's very politely put.
But we're still supporting those franchisees, and we've also said to franchisees, look, guys, if you want to remain as a Scooters, we'll still support you. We'll honour our obligations in terms of the franchise agreement. We've entered into other agreements with franchisees where we've said to them, if you don't want to trade as a Scooters and you want to trade as something else, you can do that. We'll still supply you stock if you want. For a period of time. So we've tried to be, with those stores, sort of the messy end, I suppose, of a conversion, we've tried to be as fair and equitable as we think we can be in the circumstances. Are
you looking to an aggressive African rollout with any of your brands?
So I wouldn't say aggressively we're not. I don't think, it's easy to get wooed by the allure of going cross-border. But the opportunity in South Africa really is a big one. And so we've got some markets that we trade in. Namibia is one where we've got quite a few outlets of quite a few of our brands, but we think right now our focus is very much on South Africa.
Let's unpack that statement a little further. The opportunity in South Africa is a big one. A number of captains of industry really looking at South Africa at the moment and thinking a wait and see attitude is appropriate given the economic contraction, given the political jostling that we've seen. What is it about your models that brings opportunity to the fore?
When you want to license international brands, you're making quite a big strategic choice about what you're not going to do. One of the things you're not going to do is expand into markets where other people have got that license. So that in itself is already quite a big step that we made when we chose to license these brands. That's why we've quite carefully chosen which brands to license and which we don't want to license, because we've got to make these brands work in this market. And the points you've raised now, factor heavily into that decision making. So we think, our view of pizza, we are very bullish on pizza. It really gets into many markets and it does that well.
And if consumers buy down from eating out at restaurants, then next stop is pizza.
Exactly. So right now I still maintain you can't shop cheaper at a supermarket than you can buy fast food. And certainly with a brand like Starbucks and coffee, we think that again in the South African culture, the general upswell of our nature of being with people, wanting to get together, we don't see that going away. It'll evolve, it'll change as a brand like Starbucks.
It's quite a highly contested market from a competitive perspective.
Enormously
You've got your Vitas, your Seattles, you've got a number of other brands that come to mind. But you believe that the strength of the Starbucks brand will win through?
Well, and this is probably the other thing, is if you're going to adopt the strategy we've adopted, you absolutely have to have the world's leading brands behind you. Because if you want to endure the competition, we don't believe you can make a decision based on competition, because even if there's none today, there may be lots tomorrow. And any good business is eventually going to attract competition. So almost coming into a market that's already quite competitive, I think sharpens us a little bit more. We have to think more keenly about some things than maybe if we weren't in a market that was as competitive as it is currently.
Let's turn our attention to Fish and Chips Co. You were embroiled in some legal issues for a couple of years.
For far too long.
Exactly, for 3 years or so, and you settled in August 2015, but you settled out of court.
Yeah.
Is everything done and dusted?
Yeah, that was really just...
as they say, hanging your dirty laundry on the line.
It was wasteful, but yes, it's all settled. And I think like many of these things, it takes time for everyone to understand what the end game is.
And are you confident that the Fish and Chips Co. is a brand that you will continue to put money behind?
Yeah, so we've had 2 terrible years in that business.
Cost of fish has gone up.
Yeah, cost of fish went up, and the big problem with that was, aside from fish going up, the other proteins didn't go up. So the value difference between fish and chicken became quite large. So those price-sensitive consumers went back to chicken.
Back to chicken.
Although they really like fish, and what we've seen now, and we've had a great a great last 6 months. And so we've seen same-store sales come back again. We've seen our margins improve. They were hit quite hard beginning of the year with the drought and the price of potatoes. So we're still bullish on that segment because we're in the lower income consumer.
And what about cheese and nyama?
Yeah, so that's a great category. It's also got a lot of competition. We've had a look at guys in that category before in terms of acquiring them, but we just haven't found value in any of them. We couldn't agree on anything, so we've got the 2 business we've got now. And we're still committed to that sector. There'll be a time when the low-income consumers got more disposable income. The business at the moment has turned around very pleasingly in the last 6 months after a hard 2 years. And we've got more than 200 stores in that segment. and we've got opportunities to start to move into slightly different demographics, which is what we're busy with at the moment, and part of that turnaround.
Earlier you spoke about those investors that have been with you for some time, are patient, are long-term in nature, and I go now to some of the numbers out there: 52-week high at R4.41, 52-week low at 195. How patient are shareholders going to have to be for you to bed down both Domino's and Starbucks, and for the value to be demonstrated?
So, when we raised that equity, we said to shareholders that, we thought Starbucks we'd get to an EBITDA break even in that Starbucks business about store 4 or 5. We still look like we set on, nothing's really changed our thinking around that. And, we still maintain that in terms of what we know now, the capital that we've raised would see us through being able to roll out 20 Starbucks stores a year thereafter without having to raise any extra equity.
Franchisees coming to the fore for Starbucks?
It's all corporate owned.
Is it all corporate owned? All 200 stores?
Yeah.
Ultimately.
And Starbucks' reason is really quite simple. They say, you know what, we want to know that we're dealing with one person and there's only one link between us and the final customer. Which if I look around the world...
Do you believe that's the right model now?
So if I look around the world and what's happening, a lot of global brands are starting to move back a bit. So even someone like Domino's, although they're sub-franchised and we're allowed to sub-franchise Domino's, the more successful, there's a bit of a mix of corporate and franchised. And part of the challenge in South Africa, which I alluded to earlier, is it's just not easy to find long-term committed, competent franchisees that are really in it and are going to and are going to do justice to your brand. And then there's the simple, I think the market economics are changing. That you've got to be able to respond quickly. In a corporate environment, you want to change something, you do some maths, you think about the problem, you change it. It doesn't work, you stop doing it. Whereas in a franchise model, it's far more consultative.
Just coming back to Domino's, you've got, we touched on it earlier, you've got a centralized kitchen.
Yeah.
And that's why you need the 100 stores to basically justify that centralized kitchen. Yeah. Is that correct?
Yeah. So we manufacture dough centrally as well. So we do fresh dough, manufactured, delivered to our store a couple of times a week or as often as the store needs it. So we've got a dough production facility, 2 of them in fact, one in Joburg.
Must be many lessons that you've learned in establishing that kitchen.
Yeah, absolutely, and we were lucky that we had Domino's essentially came in. Their model around the world is every single one of their markets has got a kitchen. So they came and designed it with us and essentially parachuted in a design that was suitable for our market. So we're very fortunate there because that's 40 years of tweaking and tinkering with the recipe and the curve and the pipe and the this and the that.
Why Domino's? Why did you go after the Domino's brand of all the pizza brands globally?
It's a good question, but really quite simple to answer. Is that we spoke to the top 3 pizza brands in the world at the time, and I had a pre-existing relationship with Domino's because I tried to convert scooters to Domino's in 2004. But notwithstanding that, our thought was that we liked the fact that Domino's is singularly focused on delivery, doesn't have multiple formats of stores. We liked their approach to franchising. So, the same way as franchisees want us to think of franchisees first, they've got a great culture that resonated with us. And if we look at their digital space with e-commerce, they're by far and away the leader in e-commerce and digital engagement with the customer than any other brand on the planet, I'd say, when it comes to QSR. We've seen peaks in online ordering, above 50% of sales. And who would have thought that we'd have customers, we'd have that much
ordering online?
Ordering online. Who would have thought? So we're seeing, and of course we've got Domino's, who are doing more than $4 billion a year just in online sales. Around the world, their average is 50%. So they're doing stuff that I suspect we haven't even thought about doing, and certainly we would never have had the investment to be able to do.
Carlo, when you say it's going to take you 5 to 6 stores to break even when it comes to Starbucks, does that mean you are able to look for other brands in the fast food space? Or are you just going to pause for a while?
Everyone wants us to go and buy something else. No, look, we feel like we're the dog that's caught the bus. And one of the undertakings we gave to shareholders is, and we also felt it ourselves, is that we really wanted to focus on the 2 brands that we've that the international brands we've got. We think that the long-term earnings potential of Starbucks and Domino's is enormous within the taste business. And then, we've also got a luxury goods business through Arthur Kaplan that's got great potential for growth.
Yes, and we're moving to luxury goods now,
yeah,
because
so
that's always been something, and I'm sure, again, at many investor roadshows and shareholder meetings, everyone's asked you, how does Natal Wholesale Jewelers fit with the broader taste holdings strategy? And I know you're going to tell me now, because you've also got Arthur Kaplan and the world's finest watches.
So, we ended up with NWJ through a number of circumstances and decisions along the way. One of them was franchising, and that we thought we had skill in franchising, and we think we do. What we've got is a business in a luxury goods business that is also highly branded. Through Arthur Kaplan, we're the largest retailers of Rolex and Breitling and all the luxury Swiss brands in Southern Africa.
I hope you're wearing one of those brands. I won't embarrass you and get you to show us. I couldn't help slipping that in.
Thank you. We've got a business that fits a lot of how we think around a category. So in a category, we want to be represented among lower income consumers. NWJ does that. We're the entry level place to go. And then among high income consumers, you've got to have strong brands. And we have that through Arthur Kaplan and watches. Same as we have in our food segment, exactly the same thing. But of course, the question everyone says is what's going to happen in the future? And I think there's quite clearly a world in the future where those businesses are separated. They've both got opportunity to become substantial businesses. And within the luxury goods segment, it's a fantastic business that we've built there. If you think of the brands that Arthur Kaplan has and what NWJ does in the low end of the segment.
When you look back on the story, and correct me if I'm wrong, but 2004, the first Scooters pizza store opened in Durban. When you look back on the journey to where you are now, what is your overriding thought?
Look, I started Scooters when I was 26, and I took a decision then to stay in South Africa. Is that I don't regret that for one bit.
So it wasn't a difficult decision to make.
It wasn't. I think we've made a difference to a lot of people's lives, in particularly, and we're continuing to do that now with what we're trying to do with our partners through Starbucks and Domino's, in our corporate store network in particular. We've still managed to do this while we've always wanted to have fun in the businesses that we do, and bring something new to the market. When I started Scooters, I really wanted to do three things: was give customers something I didn't have, which was get your pizza in 39 minutes or it's free. I wanted to give franchisees a great investment opportunity, and I wanted to create a place to work that was a little different, and that was rewarding for people. And we're getting to that all over again. So after 16 years, I'm back in a startup business almost.
Have there been very challenging moments along the way?
We ran out of money more than a few times when we started Scooters, and didn't get paid salaries more than a few times. There have been challenges, when we've taken our eye off the ball.
And how have you held it together over those tough times?
I've always had a good support system around us, whether it was a formalised board or my family, and I was lucky enough to work with my dad until 3 years ago, when he finally retired from the business because he had enough of board meetings at 70. And it was probably, in all of these things, I would say that we had good guys in the corner. And probably the best lesson I ever learned was never be afraid to ask questions. And to learn new things, and that would be it. I'm a pretty average guy that started a business with great partners in the end.
Talk to me about your partners. Who have you surrounded yourself with?
So that's changed. I think in the journey of any leader, you've got to think about who your mentors are constantly, and you've got to change them to fit the circumstances you're in, because that's what changes. I often compare the journey of a new business to free diving. Is you're always equalizing, because you've got to make sure the pressure inside matches the pressure outside. So you've always got to change what's happening inside your business to match the growth. And similarly, the mentors.
I take it that you are a free diving enthusiast.
I have been, yes. We've appointed Grant Patterson to our board, who's proved to be the right skill set for the right time in terms of where we are now, bringing new levels of governance to our business as we're growing. So Grant has been a great new source of wisdom for us. We're learning so much from these international partners that it really is quite staggering. I've always thought we've got a great level of retail in South Africa. I look back now and I actually think we may have missed a little bit with, through sanctions. We were given a runway to develop and therefore thought we were great. And I look at how some of, how these guys operate globally, and I'm thinking, wow, there's a lot we can learn from these guys.
Skills transfer, how are you doing that for your team? If you look at the Dominos international operation and the Starbucks operation.
It's enormous. I think, a lot of people go, American brand, and I'm thinking, you guys don't know what's happening in the background. We built an IT competency in South Africa that must rival anything else. They've learned stuff around e-commerce, firstly with Dominos. And now we're building My Starbucks Rewards, which is, we're learning from people who've got the largest loyalty program in the world. And we're learning from them. So we send guys overseas very often. We're all sitting here going, goodness me, we're just all going to university again. And we get that benefit. We're all South Africans in the business. And we get that benefit. And when guys leave our business, they will go to another business and they will take their skills to that business.
The story is 16 years down the line. As a last question, when you look to the horizon, what do you think the next 10 years holds for Taste? And 10 years is it's a long-term view now.
Yeah, it is. So, I do think that there will be a few more brands in our stable, but we still want to build an enduring business that's admired mostly by the people inside the business, because we believe if they admire the business, we'll treat our customers right. And if that happens, then our customers will admire the business in turn. We think we've got a lot of hard work to do still. And I would say we're probably just getting started again.
I think that's a perfect point to leave it on. Carlo, thanks so much for your time. I've been chatting to Carlo Gonzaga, who is the CEO of Taste Holdings. You're watching Captains of Industry here on CNBC Africa, DSTV 410.